Okay, still me, Garnet, working with the Neuro Light Practical Guide for Beginners, Basic Concepts. Still, right here, page 1 in the index, capacity and demand. Boy, 10 minutes, could be 10 hours. Your body is your brain is your body. Your brain is physical. And physical isn't just a lump of meat. Physical is extraordinary. Some of you know my attitudes about that and my argument with Plato. But anyway, capacity and demand. Why I say physical is because the body is physical, the brain is physical. There are so many things that we already know and understanding better about the way the body behaves, and that gives us insight into the way the brain behaves. Understanding neuroplastic capacity and neuroplastic demand is fundamental. It follows principles you're already aware of. For example, if I know, let's say I'm an exercise trainer, and I know that you can lift comfortably up to 50 pounds. That's your capacity, your ability. And then I give you a 100-pound weight, well, that's foolish because your maximum is 50 pounds. I've given you a demand that is much greater than your capacity. Now that isn't true just for muscles, that's also true of the brain's ability to process signaling. Capacity and demand. Sometimes I think of explaining capacity a little less kind of, mechanically, and thinking of it like the degree of your ability or even your vitality. How it is that you're able, let's say take it to yoga, let's go to the body again. There are certain asanas or poses that some people can do and some people don't. So you have to think of matching capacity and demand. I want you to reflect on it because in the Neuro Light, and frankly, any method or device or technique that creates signal stimulation, brain stimulation, has this as a very important principle to be aware of. Not everybody has the same capacity. I think it's more evident in a simple way if you watch and look, say, the way that people age and how the physical body has less capacity. That means you'll also notice the brain has less capacity. The person's ability to engage in conversation, their ability to concentrate, the ability to be creative, even engage in social activity and entertainment, you'll notice that in many people in the aging process, this begins to diminish. So if their capacity was here and they used to do this, meaning this is the capacity and this is the demand, and now the capacity is going down, what you can expect is that what they're capable of experiencing, what they're capable of integrating, is also going to be reduced. So capacity and demand have an ongoing relationship. There are many other sources for this. There are other videos that I've done. I talk about it more extensively. Here, in the beginner's guide, the assumption is that you've just gotten the Neuro Light, so you're trying to get comfortable. One of the things that you'll notice in the Neuro Light is that there are grades. They're foundation, intermediate, and advanced. You'll see that in the brain gym for exercises. You'll see that in the brain skills for compositions. Like, what is that? The example I usually give, back to yoga, you go to a yoga center, you want to take some classes, and you'll notice on the schedule that there are beginners classes, there are intermediate classes, and there are advanced classes. Because the demand in that level of yoga, this is a rough analogy of course, right, is greater. So your capacity has to be greater. If you have a low capacity in yoga asanas, which I would have because I don't practice yoga on a regular basis, then I wouldn't expect that I could go in to an advanced, maybe not even an intermediate yoga class, and be able to perform positively the asanas because the demands are greater than my capacity. So that's the second on page 1, capacity and demand. The more that you appreciate the person's, meaning maybe yourself, your relative capacity to process signals, light and sound, what you'll see is that there's a much more comfortable relationship to the demands that you give, and you're going to have positive results. You don't take a kid in grade 3 arithmetic and, freak them out with calculus or something like that, because, as an analogy, they're not there yet. They're not there yet. So this concept of capacity and demand is hugely, hugely important. You have to think, that the Neuro Light doesn't make the brain do something. It sets up what I would call probability states. You can go to a class to learn something. There's a probability of learning it depending on a lot of things. If you go there, you're tired, you haven't been sleeping, maybe you're sick, or you're distracted by a problem that you've got, there's a very low probability of integrating the information. So these things, should be pretty much obvious. One of the ways that you'll see people not being able to process the demand level of a light and sound session is during the session they fall asleep. And it isn't actually sleep. I have a couple of videos on that. Look it up, why people fall asleep. It's checking out. The brain reaches a maximum ability and the inhibitors turn on, which means the attention turns off. It's a protection process. So you'll notice, unless you're just straight out tired, you're sleepy, and you do a Neuro Light session, well, you might fall asleep just because you'd fall asleep even if you lay down just to relax, boom. You're tired, you haven't been sleeping or something. So don't mistake that for what I'm talking about. When you do a session, a Neuro Light session, you'll notice, are you able to maintain clarity and attention? Because clarity and attention are necessary for neuroplastic change. That's what triggers it. So if you're dozing, sliding, you're checking out, be aware there's a high probability that you're putting too much demand into the capacity of your brain. Dial it down. Choose a more simple composition. Go into the brain gym. Maybe even decrease the general light intensity on the user interface. So please, think about capacity and demand. Think about it in terms that you're already familiar with, and understand it's also true for your brain. Right? So a kid in grade 3 for mathematics, at that point arithmetic, should not be exposed to the demands of calculus or something. Exercise. If you can't do, if your hamstrings are so tight, don't have somebody come and push you down, making the demand much greater than your capacity. Yoga class, light sound stimulation, it's all the same story. So page 1, basic concepts, Neuro Light practical guide for beginners, capacity and demand. It's right there under neuroplastic as a principle. So neuroplasticity, capacity and demand, very, very important. Think about it, reflect on it. You'll do better with the Neuro Light. Thanks.